minutes away from the start of an important hearing before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. We'll hear the chairman gavel this hearing, Bob Menendez of New Jersey. Then the Secretaries of State and Defense will testify together with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. As we await the start of the hearing, lots of anticipation, let's bring in two guests. The former Republican presidential candidate, former Congressman Ron Paul is joining us, also Democratic Congressman Mike Quigley of Illinois. Congressman Paul, first to you. You are totally, correct me if I'm wrong, totally opposed to any U.S. military force in Syria right now, despite all of that evidence that the Syrian regime used chemical weapons against its own people. Is that right?
Yeah, but I don't accept your statement because I think that a lot of people question some of that evidence. But I don't need, that is beside the point because of the policy that I advocate is a non-interventionist foreign policy. I don't believe it's in our interest. I don't believe it's our national security best interest to be involved. I don't think it's legal under national law or international law. I think just killing more people because he has killed some people, if that is the case, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So a non-interventionist doesn't pretend that they are all wise, that they can go into a country that's been in civil war, where there's several different factions fighting and killing each other, there's Christians getting killed by rebels, and the Assad regime being blamed for doing this and that. I don't believe it's capable morally, nor are we able to go in and say, oh, we know who the good guys are. We know there's 3 different groups on the rebels, but we know that we won't give any help to the al-Qaeda. We just have to punish Assad. It's a civil war, and there's no way you're going to figure it out. I smell Iraq all over again. I remember the assurances that were given us 10 years ago, and members of Congress believe that. But let me tell you, the situation is a lot different. The American people are on my side on this issue today, and there's a lot more people in Congress now are saying it makes no sense. And just listen to the military commanders. They said, you know, we don't even have the money for this. We have to have a supplemental. Now, how about all these warmongers getting ready to bomb and kill and invade or do whatever they think necessary, and they don't even have the money, and then they have to appropriate the money, which means more money drained from our economy. So the policy of a non-intervention, as a matter of fact, it's pretty easy. We just mind our own business, take care of America, and obey the law and obey the Constitution. Then you don't have to pretend, oh, I know how bad Assad is, and I know that he's a little bit worse than the al-Qaeda, so let's go on the side of the al-Qaeda. It makes no sense whatsoever to us.
All right, Congressman Ron Paul, totally opposed to any U.S. involvement in Syria, and doesn't necessarily even believe the President of the United States, the Secretary of State, when they say they have high confidence that the Syrians did, in fact, use chemical weapons against their own people. Congressman Quigley, give us your reaction. You think Ron Paul is right, or do you think President Obama is right?
Well, let me just say this. It is clear to me after being briefed that there are gas attacks took place and that the Assad regime was responsible. The question is, what do we do now? I have every faith in the administration was honest and forthright about that process. This is an extraordinarily messy sectarian struggle. It is not exactly clear to me at this point that our involvement will help the situation and perhaps not create unintended consequences. So I think there are serious questions to be answered, but trust in the administration isn't one of those.
Ron Paul, as you take a look at what's going on, and there's going to be a huge debate that begins within the next few minutes in the Senate before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. The House is going to take up all of these matters. There'll be floor debates, close votes, I assume, in both the House and the Senate. We know how you would vote if you were still a member, but why is it that so many Republicans, including John McCain, Lindsey Graham, and others, they not only want the president to go ahead and launch strikes against targets inside Syria, but they want to go even further than what the president says he wants to do. These are members of your own party. Why is there this serious split between those, shall we say, more libertarian, isolationist types, non-interventionist types like you and your son, Senator Rand Paul, and people like John McCain and Lindsey Graham?
Well, I think people are waking up. There's been a Tea Party movement, a grassroots movement. The young people in the Congress, the newer members, are on our side on this. Just take a look at the bipartisan support we got for trying to rein in NSA. That was Democrats and Republicans, but sort of grassroots. And the leadership at both levels. They want the NSA and all this spying going on. This is what's going to happen on this vote. Leadership will probably get together and get some sort of authority passed for the president to try to make him feel better or something. But how many people does he have to kill to feel better because he drew a line in the sand or had this red line? I mean, what was the purpose of all that? Nobody knows why we're going in there, and nobody's sure who are the good guys and the bad guys. But the people are waking up. They remember 10 years ago. They remember and they witness the results today of what's going on in Iraq. Now, even some people in Iraq are saying, well, do not go in there and bomb because we're going to help Assad. Some of the Shia wants to come in. You know, al-Assad wants to go in and help him. So this thing could easily spread. But who created Iraq? We did. That's our country. And now they're aligned with the Iranians. So the whole theory is that we're going into Syria because that's the way you march into Iran. At the same time, we've made it tougher. We've made it tougher for Israel. We've made it tougher for the people who want to live in peace in Iraq. And now we're just stirring it up in Syria. It's a civil war. We don't have the authority. And the vote in England, the British vote in the Parliament, that is fantastic. The first time since 1782.
Ron Paul,
the people are getting in charge.
I got to wrap it up, but I just want to clarify one point. You're not blaming the United States for the civil war in Syria over the past 2.5 years that have already resulted more than 100,000 people dead. I think we just lost Ron Paul. Unfortunately, the satellite must have gone down, but we'll have him back for sure. Ron Paul joining us. Congressman Quigley, thanks to you as well. Mike Quigley joining us from Illinois. Let's bring
where Ron Paul is right now. Congressman, good to have you.
Thank you, Neil. Good to be with you.
How important is this state for you?
Well, it's very important, but it's not do or die. You know, we expect to pick up some delegates as we have continued to do so, and we'll continue on.
You know, it's interesting. It is a proportional vote, and along the way, by a proportional vote, even if you're second or third, certainly nothing wrong with that. You've been very, very consistent. You could amass quite a few delegates, whether or not you get the nomination, and certainly you have a powerful voice. I know you obviously want that nomination, but let me ask you about this process and the extremes. You've seen the leaders go up and down. Now Iowa's been recertified to show Santorum won and not Romney. South Carolina, where Romney was winning, he might lose. What's going on within your party?
Well, I don't think the message is very clear. I have a very clear message, but I'm challenging the status quo. The rest of the candidates are part of the status quo, and nobody seems to be happy because they don't see what difference they're going to make. So their numbers come and go, but if you look at ours, you know, there was one time, not too many months ago, they knew that we had a significant group of people that were interested in what I was doing and having a precise definition of what government should be doing. But the ceiling was always 8 or 9%. You know, yeah, he's doing okay, but there's a ceiling. But now the ceiling shifted to about 17 or 18%. Now they're conceding that, you know, it's over 20%. And if you include independents and Democrats, our percentages are much better. You know, not too long ago, there was a poll done where I was up against Obama, and I was equal to Romney in that. So
does it bug
we have a lot of
you,
support from independents
and
Democrats.
You've been a remarkable phenomenon, but I always think you're like a sort of a thin Rodney Dangerfield. You don't get any respect. Does that bug you?
Well, I think a lot of people think that. Certainly Jon Stewart thinks so. You know, this whole idea. I mean, if you look, somebody told me, you know, from this last debate, I thought I did rather well. And they went down the number of times they mentioned the other three candidates in the review of the debate. And it was, you know, like 80, 90 times, depending on which it was. I was mentioned one time in all the discussion of the debate after it was over. Right. Now, you might argue I didn't win, or some people argue that I did.
You had the juice.
But it deserved more than one mention on all the stations. Somebody went and added these all up.
Thank you, Congressman.
So what's going on here? You're in this media business. I'd like to know exactly
well,
how that
I'm really excited about a lot of his ideas, especially when it comes to bringing the soldiers home. I've been serving for 10 years now, and all 10 years of those have been during wartime. I'd like to see a little peacetime army, and I think he has the right idea.
Now, you have done 2 tours in Afghanistan. You told me you're going to go back for a 3rd tour. I mean, if you can see your neck right there, what you have on your tattoo, 9/11, remember, and a picture of the Twin Towers. You know, some Republicans out there have been saying that Ron Paul would be very dangerous for this country because he wants to bring troops like you back from your post from all over the world.
Well, I think it would be even more dangerous to start nitpicking wars with other countries. Someone like Iran, Israel is more than capable of.
All right, we just lost our connection, unfortunately, with Dana. Dana, stand by if you can hear me. We're going to get back. You want to go to Candy Crowley over at Mitt Romney headquarters. People are beginning to...
Now, I have another speaker, a special guest tonight. He's been with us this evening. Matter of fact, he's been with us in our campaign for quite a few years. And you may have met him because he's been around here this evening. But I'd like him to come out and say a few words. He's been serving in the military for 10 years, and he's been overseas a lot. A lot of it was in Iraq and Afghanistan. And he was on TV tonight, and he didn't quite get to finish his statement. So I've asked him if he would come out and make his comments about why he supports our foreign policy, why he is fighting for the Constitution, and what he thinks we should do. But I would like to invite out now Jesse Thorson to come out and say a few words to you. Thank you.
How about Ron Paul? If there's any man out there that's had a vision for this country, it is definitely him. His foreign policy is by far, hands down, better than any candidates out there, and I'm sure you all know that. We don't need to be picking fights overseas, and I think everybody else knows that too. I'm flabbergasted right now. This is an incredible moment for me. I can't believe it. It's like meeting a rock star. But you know what? We're going to go to New Hampshire. We're all going to get involved. We're going to keep getting online. We're going to keep talking to people. And we are going to make sure this man is the next president of the United States.
Thank you very much. That is a powerful message. And once again, we all know where the active military people send their money when they're campaigning. They send it to our campaign for liberty, our campaign for the Constitution, our campaign for liberty of government, our campaign for personal liberty and privacy, and a wise foreign policy. The most important thing we have to remember is we want to have influence in the world. That's very important. We want to be active in the world. We want to talk to people and work to people, trade with people, and be friends with people. But what we need to realize is our ways. You know, there's people who say that we are an exceptional nation, and we certainly are and have been, but we're slipping. But this idea that our exceptionalism out of desperation say that we are so exceptional, what we must do is prove it to the world. We have to send our troops around the world and force it down their throats. If they don't do it, we'll, invade them and occupy them and force election on them. I'll tell you the best way to spread our message, and that is do our job at home. Preserve our liberties at home. Provide the free market. Have a sound currency. Balance the budget. Set an example and get the rest of the world to emulate us. That is the road to peace and prosperity. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, so Ron Paul, you hear him speaking to his supporters there in...
Senator, in just a little while, they start a 5-stop tour here in Des Moines in a couple of hours. But one thing that we really are looking for is whether or not Ron Paul's organization can prevail. I talked to a senior Paul advisor who insists that they have enough voters ID'd, identified, that actually could give... All right, we apologize for that. We lost our connection to Dan.
To get people to work, they've got to be able to speak to those voters who've lost their jobs over the past few years. Governor, I mean, Romney and Gingrich and Santorum are the same. They stand for the same things. They don't differ on the issues very much. It's all, well, you did this 7 years ago, and you're a moron for what you did in Massachusetts, and you were there. Look, but right now, there's no difference. There's no difference. They're the same. So people are voting personalities now. That's what they're voting.
I think you're right. You said that in the talking memos, and I couldn't agree more. There's not really a lot of space between any of these guys, except with Ron Paul. There's some pretty big space.
But he's out of it. That's why we're not even paying attention.
Exactly. But I'm just saying that when you talk about the three guys, and I do think that Santorum has a tough go after South Carolina, unless he has a big surprise. He roughed up Newt Gingrich pretty good in the debate, I will say that. And he called a lot of things into question about Newt's judgment. But two things have happened for Newt this week that really put him in that position to possibly win South Carolina. One was that debate performance, and the other was Chuck Norris's endorsement today.
Chuck Norris, everyone.
So that is going to be a big deal for him.
Okay. Chuck Norris, of course, endorsing the governor last time around in 2008. All right, now, the income tax.
Georgia, 76 votes.
Madam Secretary, on behalf of the Georgia Republican voters in the Empire State of the South, I, Sue Everhart, stand here as chairman of the GOP with Speaker of the House David Ralston, and we, along with Governor Nathan Deal, proudly give 72 of our delegate votes to the next President of the United States, Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan. 3 votes for Romney.
Okay. Well done. Whoever controlled the microphone did a great job.
Could I please have the state of Georgia repeat your vote count?
Yes, you can, Madam Secretary. 72 delegate votes for Mitt Romney. We have 3 for Ron Paul and 1 undecided.
Georgia, 72, Romney.
Proudly give 72 of our delegate votes to the next President of the United States, Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan. 3 votes for Ron.
Okay. Well done. Whoever controlled the microphone did a great job. Okay. Well done. Whoever controlled the microphone did a great job. Okay. Well done. Whoever controlled the microphone did a great job.
Another question about electability. Do you have any, sir? There's always the question as to whether or not you are in fact viable. Your differences with the Republicans with the rest of the Republicans on this stage has raised questions about whether or not you can actually win the Republican nomination, sir.
Well, we've only had 2 little primaries so far, so it's pretty premature to decide which one is going to be the candidate. But, you know, when you think about it, if you measured everything I've ever said, every vote I've ever taken against the Constitution, you know, I'm a strict constitutionalist. So are you suggesting the Republicans should write me off because I'm a strict constitutionalist? I'm the most conservative member here. I have voted, you know, against more spending and wasting government than anybody else. So you're suggesting that I'm not electable and the Republicans don't want me because I'm a strict fiscal conservative? Because I believe in civil liberties? Why should we not be defending civil liberties? And why should we not be talking about foreign policy that used to be the part of the Republican Party? Mr. Republican Robert Taft didn't even want us to be in NATO. And you're saying now that we have to continue to borrow money from China to finance this empire that we can't afford? Let me see if I get this right. We need to borrow $10 billion from China, and then we give it to Musharraf, who's a military dictator who overthrew an elected government, and then we go to war, we lose all these lives promoting democracy in Iraq. I mean, what's going on here? And you're saying that this isn't appealing to Republicans? Where did Where did this come about? I think this is a Republican message. I defend the platform. It used to say we got rid of the Department of Education. It doesn't say that. Now, we as Republicans went and doubled the size of the Department of Education. So where have we gone? I think we've lost our way. And then the insinuation that I am less Republican because of that?
Congressman, thank you very much. We have to take one more break. We'll be right back with one of the most contentious issues of the day. Stay tuned.
All right, John, fascinating stuff. Ron Paul is speaking now in Minnesota. I want to hear what he's saying.
Thank you. Sounds like there are plenty of friends of freedom in this audience. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for inviting me and permitting me to come and visit. There's an important election going on, as you know, and I feel like I'm very honored that I can come and visit with you before this election occurs. But most people know a lot about me. I thought I would start off by saying a few things that a lot of people don't know. One is I'm an OB doctor. I've delivered about 4,000 babies over about a 30-year medical practice. Also, I am the only candidate that served in the military. I was in the Air Force for 5 years as a flight surgeon, both on active duty and in the Air National Guard. But I want to briefly, in the short period of time I have, is to go over, in general, the platform that I've been running on. And I've been campaigning, of course, for what I call the cause of liberty for a long time. I got involved in politics in the 1970s because I believe we were embarking on something that would lead to an economic disaster. And that was the destruction of our currency. It was back then that we lost our last link of our dollar to gold. And the predictions then, which have been carried out, the predictions would be that it would lead to printing too much money, spending too much money, running up too much debt, having an entitlement system that was out of control, and also a foreign policy that would lead us to do more things overseas than we should be doing. Now, we've gotten ourselves into this mess because I think we have been too careless. The people have been careless. Our representatives in Congress have been careless, and careless in the sense that we have not taken the oath of office seriously. I believe that most of our problems have come because we have violated the Constitution, and we could solve almost all our problems if we would only send people to Washington who took the oath of office seriously and obeyed the Constitution. Our deficit is over $1 trillion every year, $1.4, $1.5 trillion a year. Now, there's no serious attempt in Washington, and quite frankly, if you listen to the other candidates, there's no serious attempt to cut spending. I believe if you want to get our house in order, our country back on track again, we have to cut spending, so I have proposed to cut $1 trillion out of the budget in 1 year. You might say, no, I've heard they were going cutting spending. Congress was lax. They turned it over to the super committee, and they didn't do a very good job. So there's some automatic cuts of over $1 trillion starting in the year 2013 and stretching out over a 10-year period, and they're going to cut $1 trillion out of a $10 trillion proposed increase. That is not a decrease. That's $100 billion a year over a 10-year period. We spend $100 billion in debt every single month. That's how serious it is. And we have a chairman of the Federal Reserve Board who has promised that he would use your dollars to bail out all of Europe who bought too much Greek debt, and they're in trouble, and he's promised to bail them out. That is why I emphasize the Federal Reserve. We have to get control of the Federal Reserve. We have to get control of our money. We need sound money, and we should never allow an organization like the Federal Reserve. They created in the midst of the big bailouts. $15 trillion they churned. Congress was derelict in their duty. They spent $1 trillion, but the Federal Reserve 10 to 15 trillion, and they did it in secrecy, and they resent it when I asked questions and said, we need to audit you and find out what you're doing and who you're bailing out and who are the privileged customers. This is certainly where we've made a lot of progress in bringing attention to the American people the seriousness of the monetary system. Federal Reserve has been around for 100 years, and it's only been in the last 3 or 4 years that it's gotten its attention that it deserves. So I will continue on that. I do not believe we can have a healthy economy with unhealthy money, and therefore we have to do something. The first thing we should do is have a thorough audit of the Fed and make sure they're actually holding the gold they claim they're holding. But the reason the Federal Reserve is so important is it generates big government. The bigger the government, the smaller our liberties. Our government is way too big. That is why I believe that we're at a point now where our liberties have been severely eroded, and we need to curtail that trend. We've had various pieces of legislation that have been very abusive to our liberties. You take the Patriot Act, which was passed in 2001. The Patriot Act sounds wonderful, but if it had been called what it really was, repeal the Fourth Amendment Act, it wouldn't have been passed, and it ought to be repealed, to tell you the truth. Just recently, the National Defense Authorization Act was passed. Buried in that provision was a very, very serious provision that gives the president now the authority to use the Army to arrest any American citizen, deny him a trial, deny him a lawyer, and put him in prison indefinitely. That is not what America is all about.
I'm going to break away briefly from Ron Paul. I want to go to Stillwater, Minnesota right now.
Hey, what is up, YouTubers? Matt Larson 10, and the video that you're about to see is not really new. I've posted a few videos kind of similar to this where people have been blacking out Ron Paul in the media. Here's another poll. This time it's by Tweety Bird Chris Matthews on MSNBC, where they just failed to mention him at all. He won the poll, and he's not even on the poll. So, of course, he can't win the poll when he's not on it, guys, right? But, luckily, the results were on the line, and a nice man was able to find it. So here's the video right here showing the actual numbers at the end, and basically everything you need to know is in the video. More on Paul blackout, censorship. This is becoming a daily routine where they're leaving him off the newspapers in Georgia. He's not mentioned, or sorry, when he's mentioned in Fox News, he won the results. But he was on the bottom. You know, they typically start with the last place on top and work their way down. When Ron Paul wins, but you guys, this is just getting sickening. Watch this video. Let me know what you guys think of it down below in a text or video response. Maybe we should get some contact information out for Chris Matthews. Give him a nice couple phone calls and or emails. Let him know what we think about him, omitting him from this results. As always, guys, this is Matt Larson 10. Go Ron Paul. Peace.
Okay, let's look at the numbers. Here are the favorable unfavorables right now on the Republican frontrunners. Gingrich, 63% unfavorable, 25% favorable. Look at that spread. Romney, 54% unfavorable, 34 favorable, a 20-point spread there. Santorum, he's relatively okay. 38% unfavorable, 32% favorable. He at least, well, he doesn't have a positive, but he does have a bad negative.
That's pre-kitchen sink.
Pre-kitchen sink.
What's up, guys? This is Burrs, and I'm back at you with some more skewed data, this time from MSNBC. And I gotta say, I'm a little bit let down by Joe Scarborough. This was on his Morning Joe show. I actually kind of like that guy. Sometimes, you know, he would kind of hold people's feet to the fire, but after this, and I haven't really watched it so much, but when he talks about certain issues, I'm kind of siding with him. Most of the time, sometimes I don't, but I'm let down because they had, what was this? This was this morning. They had GOP campaign cash quarter 2. let's see how much each candidate raised. So as you can see here, man, Mitt Romney, I mean, man, that guy must have done something because he's obviously in the lead. Okay, then you got Paul Lenny with 4.2, Huntsman with 4.1. Then you go down to Kane and Gingrich around 2.5. The other ones haven't, the other people in the races haven't really, I think, come out and said how much they made. So that's why it's not on here. Anyway, here's the thing. Where's Ron Paul? Oh, let's see up here at the top right. It said sources The Hill and Politico. Alright, so let's take a look at this here. This is the Politico Mitt Romney article in which it says, still, Mitt Romney finished far ahead of GOP rivals in campaign cash over the last 3 months. Republican Ron Paul, former Governor Tim Pawlenty, former Utah Governor John Huntsman all raised between 4.5 and 4.1 million. So why in the world is Ron Paul not on that list? That's the question, because I even went to the source that they stated, and it stated Ron Paul. But they didn't put Ron Paul on there. But yet Ron Paul comes on Morning Joe and talks, and Joe Scarborough says, oh, that's some good ideas. Anyway, let me show you what it should have looked like. Alright, so this is what it should have looked like. Okay, it should have been Mitt Romney, and then it should have been Ron Paul with 4.5. I think it was actually 4.6, but you know, I'll give everybody the benefit of the doubt, say 4.5, whatever, I don't really care. And then Paul Lenny and Huntsman and Kane and Gingrich is, he shouldn't even be on there. But anyway, if you want to be fair, put them on there too, whatever. So that's what it should have looked like. And it took me a little while to put that together. Anyway, just another skewed data as shown by the media. He isn't even on the list. Now you gotta ask yourself why. Why? Why are they not putting him on the list? Anyway, so there's some information for you guys. That was a screen print, or a picture of the screen. But leave the comments. Even if you don't agree and you think Ron Paul sucks, leave a damn comment. Later.
Let's introduce the candidates. Former Utah Governor John Huntsman. Representing the 6th District of Minnesota, Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann. Representing the 14th District of Texas, Congressman Ron Paul.
Congressman Paul, let me follow up with you for just 30 seconds. Is it worth going to war to prevent a nuclear weapon in Iran?
No, it isn't worthwhile. And the only way you would do that is you would have to go to the Congress. We as Commander-in-Chief aren't making the decision to go to war. You know, the old-fashioned way, the Constitution, you go to the Congress and find out if our national security is threatened. And I'm afraid what's going on right now is similar to the war propaganda that went on against Iraq. And, you know, they didn't have weapons of mass destruction, and it was orchestrated, and it was, to me, a tragedy of what's happened these last 10 years, the death and destruction, $4 trillion in debt. So, no, it's not worthwhile going to war. If you do, you get a declaration of war, and you fight it, and you win it, and get it over with.
Thank you, Congressman.
Congressman Paul, my spidey sense tells me we have a debate about to get launched here. I know you have an opinion you'd like to weigh in.
Yes. Torture is illegal, and by our laws, it's illegal by international laws.
How do you define torture, sir?
Well, waterboarding is torture, and many other things. It's illegal under international law and under our law. It's also immoral, and it's also very impractical. There's no evidence that you really get reliable evidence. Why would you accept the position of torturing 100 people because you know one person might have information? And that's what you do when you accept the principle of torture. I think it's uncivilized, and have no practical advantages, and is really un-American to accept on principle that we will torture people that we capture.
And
Major,
that's time.
Major, I have to weigh in on this. I have to say something.
have to say something on this.
I'm sorry. That brings us to the end of the first hour of the debate. Some CBS stations will be leaving us, but you can continue to follow the debate online on CBSNews.com and NationalJournal.com.